Several orbits later, we're dealt pocket 10s in the big blind. Under the gun opens at 20. He's made it clear that he's after some Bradley dollars. Brian calls in the hijack. I flat. Three of us see the flop. It's 10-3 deuce with 2 clubs. Top set for us again. I check. Under the gun bets 25. Brian calls in the hijack. I like these guys, but they're doomed. I get ultra sneaky and I flat. No one would expect me to do that with the set on a board with several draws out there. The turn is a queen. I check. Unfortunately, both players check back. The good news is that the river is another queen. We make a full house. I assume my opponents won't have much since check through on the turn. All the draws missed, and most of the 10s are accounted for. If I bet, I probably won't be able to get called by much. I check, hoping someone will take a stab at it as a bluff, or if they happen to be strong, maybe they can bet, and we'll call a check raise. We have a customer. The under the gun player bets 55. The hijack folds. Under the gun is in for a big surprise. I announce a raise to 180. This has to look extremely odd after I check 3 times. The opponent is thinking about it. He does not trust my lankiness, and he makes the call. He gets some bad news when I show my hand. He's awarded 0 Bradley dollars and instead takes a one-way trip to Paintown via boat. A good-sized pot is coming towards us. We then find out that the under the gun player called us light to potentially bluff catch.
You had anything?
No.
Oh.
I had worse than that.
What did you call me with?
Oh, man.
Anybody else I wouldn't say, but I guess from
You have ace high?
No, 9s.
9s.
The strange line works out for us. We make the maximum. Next, we're at the second table of the night where we're dealt pocket queens under the gun plus 2. Under the gun plus 1 limps in for 5. I raise to 25. The hijack calls. Under the gun plus 1 calls. We're going 3 ways to the flop. It comes queen 9-6 with 2 spades. I know what you're thinking. That's 3 hands in a row we're going over. We're gonna have top set. We'll get used to it. I wasn't lying in the intro when I said that we make a ton of huge hands throughout the whole session. Under the gun plus 1 checks. I bet 45. I typically don't slow play as the pre-flop aggressor on wet boards. There are plenty of drawing type hands that my opponents could call or raise with. The hijack folds. Under the gun plus 1 makes it 120. There aren't too many things that are better than flopping the nuts and getting check raised. This particular player only has 130 behind, but he just got caught bluff raising a few hands earlier. If he's bluffing me here, I want to keep him in. I call. The turn is the 5 of hearts. 8-7 makes it straight. I'm not too concerned about that. Under the gun plus 1 jams as I suspected he might with almost any hand that he could possibly have. I slide in chips and call. The opponent is not happy to see that.
Lose not play.
They tried to find out these
It's like 7 miles.
I got there. You have king 10.
The opponent check raised me on the flop with the gutter. The trap was set perfectly for him. He gets the rest of his money in, drawing dead to 4 outs on the turn. No problem. He drills it. If he played his cards face up, I would have taken the same line. I'm happy with the way that I played it. We just get unlucky. By chopping that, we're having a great night with lots of energy, good people, a few drinks, and a couple of aces in middle position. Under the gun plus 1 opens at 25. Under the gun plus 2 calls. I 3-bet to 105. The initial pre-flop raiser has this look in his eye like he's not ready to let go of his hand. He 4-bets to 250. It's getting intense AF in here. Under the gun plus 2 folds. I have 750 in my stack. I could flat to trap. Instead, I choose a more standard approach.
On.
You two all in.
750-ish?
Call, right? I call?
Cooler, it's a cooler. I call.
The opponent shows kings. I turn over my cards. This is definitely a cooler situation. I just want a clean run out. Nope. The first card we see is a king right in the window. It's absolutely brutal. I run the worst.
Oh my! Oh!
What?
Just kidding. We set over set the opponent. That's actually brutal for him, but I'm rooting for pocket kings to win. If another king comes with the jackpot for 3,500.
One more ace.
One more king. One more king. Ace or king. Ace or king.
We don't hit the jackpot. We do come out of it winning a pot of over 1,500. 2020 is off to an exciting start. I made a lot of big hands this session, and mostly won with them. I feel fortunate as stacks are brought towards me. I have to mention at this point that the opponent takes this beat about as well as I've ever seen. He's all smiles after, saying it was just a cooler, and he couldn't have lost to a better guy. His name's David. That's him in the 9 seat. If you ever see him playing, then maybe say hello and perhaps buy him a beer. He deserves it. That was the 5th set of the night, but I'm not done. I pick up pocket 5s under the gun plus 1. It's my very first hand at this table. I'm not paying attention and think someone raised it to 10. There's actually an under the gun straddle. I call the 10. Middle position player raises to 40. The hijack calls. I call. We go 3 ways to the flop. It's 7-5-3 with 2 diamonds. We've now made 6 sets. We're 3-2 so far. I'd like to make it 4-2. I check. The pre-flop raiser bets 75. The hijack's all in for 105. I'm not sure whether to flat or raise. The pot will reopen from the hijack jamming. I might lean more towards flatting. Then the middle position player could raise again. The hijack unfortunately didn't have enough money to reopen it. I don't want to take any chances of having a bad card come on the turn. I announce a raise of 250. It's small, hoping to keep in big overpairs because those types of hands are drawing nearly dead. The action's on the middle position player. He has a huge decision to make. We both have large stacks. If he calls or raises here, we're likely going to get it all in at some point. I wouldn't mind if that happens on the flop. He's worried that I've shown too much strength after two players have already shown interest and one's all in. He lays down what he says is pocket kings. That's too bad. Check raise would have worked out better if the hijack hadn't shoved. I turn over my cards, it's heads up, there's no more action, the turn is a 9, the river is an ace, the hijack doesn't seem too thrilled, he eventually shows he has pocket 4s, he had a pair and a gut shot on the flop, I'm up 1200 total, and I'm pumped up. I've got ace-10 suited in the big blind, under the gun +1 opens at 25, the cutoff calls, the button calls, small blind calls, I defend the big blind and call as well. We go 5 ways to the flop, it's king, queen, 7 rainbow, we have a gutter, and a backdoor flush draw. We all check. The turn is another king, small blind checks. Once it's checked around on the flop, I figure I'm the person that can most credibly rep a big hand, and I at least have a draw. I bet 50. Trying to get a bluff through 4 players is not the best idea I've ever had. Sometimes I just can't help myself. To make things even more interesting, Andrew Nemi comes by with the camera out, filming me make a questionable play. I don't even get through 1 player. Under the gun +1 calls. This is sort of scary. Maybe he has a monster. The cutoff button and small blind all fold. I peel my cards for Andrew's camera. I want to give his viewers a show. The river is an 8. We don't have anything. I can't give up on a hand that has 2 people capturing the action. That wouldn't be fun. I throw out a prayer bet at 200. This should work. My opponent has a missed draw or maybe even a queen. So I lift up my camera to get some footage of Andrew filming. I hear my opponent put in a big raise.
600? Yeah, that's not going to be a good one for us. just for Andrew's channel.
Don't edit that out because I got the footage of it too.
We punt off a few hundred, then pick up ace-4 of spades in the hijack. Under the gun limps in. I raise to 20 to isolate him. Under the gun calls. It's heads up. The flop is queen 3 deuce with 2 spades. We have the world. Under the gun checks. I bet 20. The player calls. The turn is exactly what I wanted to see. It's a 5, giving us a straight that our opponent may not expect us to have. Under the gun checks. I bet 45. It's not a huge bet. I want to keep the player in with a wide range. Under the gun makes the call. The river is a king. The player checks. This is a street where I go for a home run. I bet 160. Maybe the player will think that I'm bluffing and will call light. Maybe he'll have a strong hand himself like king queen or a king high flush draw that rivered top pair. A lot of times people just want to see whether or not a river bet is a bluff without having to wait for a vlog to come out and they'll call. One of those things happens here as the opponent puts in chips. I turn over the straight. It's a winner. Notice that my river bet was nearly 4 times what I bet on the turn when I had a big hand. That's exactly what I did when I missed my draw and bluffed on the previous hand too. Big bets don't always mean that I'm bluffing or that I have it. As a general rule, you typically want to value bet the river about twice as often as you're bluffing it. In the last hand that we'll go over for the night, it's a $20 bomb pot. We're dealt 4-3 suited in the big blind. The flop is ace-jack deuce with 2 clubs. We have a flush draw and a gutter. Small blind checks, I bet 60. Under the gun +2 calls. The button also calls. 3 of us see the turn. It's a dream card. It's the 5 of diamonds. I've got the nuts. What's even better is that it's a card that's almost never going to help me after I bet the flop unless I have exactly 4-3 of clubs. I check to make it appear as if I have a 1 pair or worse hand. Maybe someone can bet with an ace or as a semi-bluff with a draw. That's not what happens. Under the gun +2 and the button both check. That's not good. It's very possible one or both of them has better clubs than me. They're trying to realize their equity. It's also unlikely that they'll have hands strong enough to call a big river bet unless they improve. I just hope a blank comes out. Nope. It's the 5 of clubs. My hand improves from a straight to a flush, but drastically decreases in value since I don't have anything close to the nuts anymore. I check. Under the gun +2 bets 125. I've underrep my hand so far, so I could have him beat. The button tanks, gets some chips out, then calls. I really don't know what to do. The pot is large. I'm getting a great price. The problem is that I have to beat 2 players who put in money after the board paired and the flush draw got there. Typically I call in these spots. Here, I think it's too likely someone has a better flush. I take one last look and reluctantly fold. Under the gun +2 shows ace-9 of spades. Oh god, give me my cards back. The button turns over 7 deuce of clubs for a slightly better flush than me. Never mind, you can keep those cards. I make a non-standard play on the turn. It's unclear whether it helped me or hurt me. The button had a pair and a flush draw. I imagine that he would have at least called a decent sized bet, then would have gotten there on the river. I book a solid win and rack up shortly after.